Retirement seems like such a fun thing to do. We don't have to work at all. We can spend some time with our grandkids, even though some of us may not even have kids yet. We're going to be traveling. We're going to be in exotic places. So much fun. Of course, you have to finance it somehow. And so, there's many factors that we kind of think of in the back of our minds. One of them is Social Security. Well, for the older people, Social Security might still work, might still be okay, but as you know, the number of workers per retiree is declining all the time. So they say in the middle of the 2030s, the Social Security fund is going to start to really take a hit. So I suggest maybe if you're not quite 60 or even 55 or more at this point in time, we are talking just about the beginning of 2018 here, you may want to not count Social Security as one of the dominant factors in your retirement package. Some people say I'm a great saver. I save very well. But that money that's being saved and sits in some accounts making usually pretty low interest rate gets constantly hammered by inflation. And inflation is ongoing and relentless. The government claims inflation right now is around 2%. That sounds so low and wonderful. Even at 2% over the long term, your precious savings are going to take a gigantic hit because inflation is a cumulative effect. It's cumulatively eroding the buying power of your saved funds. Inflation is really higher than what governments say they are. All the Western governments fib about the inflation rate. How do they do that? Well, ideally you should really measure inflation by measuring all the items in the marketplace and how they went up in the year. That's the cost of living. But what most governments do, they just choose the most favorable subset of items, the one that didn't go up a whole lot. They say, this is what we are measuring it by. They find excuses why they don't use the bad parts. And now inflation is really nice and low. According to many people, inflation really, if you measure everything, is much closer to 5% than we think. But even at 3%, at 3% over a 10-year period, your savings, the buying power of those dollars, is going to go down by 1/3. So you have to think about stuff that where inflation could help you rather than hinder you. And in this example, it will hinder you. Now we have to consider something else. How long are you going to live? So we don't give too much thought to this, and I think that's a terrible mistake. And we need to consider that technology is making steps forward in ways that are almost indescribable. Just 15 years ago, who would have dreamt that the concept of a self-driving car would be realistic? Today, we have dozens of cars driving through the streets of San Francisco, driverless. On the health front, so much is happening, the mind just boggles. Here's one example. You know how just in the past decade, they mapped the human genome? Now, you can get a little genetic test and see what's going on. Do you have some bad genes that may create Alzheimer or other horrible thing that we don't even want to think about? They already have in research institutions an editor for your genes. A little bit like Microsoft Word, if you will, but for genes. It's called CRISPR. It's an acronym, CRISPR, without an E. You can look it up. CRISPR enables us to say, you know what? The 5th gene on the left, we don't like it very much. It could cause you to get this and that and sick and Alzheimer's. Let's change it. And CRISPR can already do it. Now, it's not commercially available yet. It's only in research facilities. What's going to happen in 10 years? CRISPR is probably going to be old dated by then, old news, and certainly widely available. Just on the strength of that, if they can cut out, change all your bad genes, turning them into good genes, what effect is that going to have on your lifespan? Are you going to live another decade? 2 decades? 3 decades? That's only one aspect of research. What about nanotechnology? Nanotechnology has been around for more than 20 years and it's evolving incredibly fast. Scientists are already saying that in 20 years, they will be able to spray 1 billion little nano robots, which are the size of a fraction of a cell, into your mouth. And they will just go into your system and repair all your cells. How old are you going to be then? Nobody even knows. Some of the most respected scientists in the world now say that if you are 40 or 50 now, beginning of 2018, you may live to be 115, 120. Incredible numbers that seem completely like science fiction, but that's what some of the best scientists in the world say. Whether it's going to happen or not, we don't know. Our imagination is not good enough to even fathom what the situation will be in 2040. We can't even imagine what it's like because our imagination is not good enough. Science just runs exponentially forward. But we have to consider it. If you're going to live to be 115, how exactly were you planning on financing all these decades? Is your money going to last? Are those savings going to last? For a lot of people, it's going to be a severe problem. It already is a severe problem with people living to 80 and 85 and 90. It already is very bad because people just simply run out of money. It's becoming one of the biggest financial planning fears in the world. So we have to find an investment mode that will work well for the long term, where inflation, instead of hindering what we saved and making it smaller, will work for us, such as in real estate, for example, when you get 30-year fixed rate loan, never changing with inflation, and inflation erodes the loan that you owe instead of what you saved. Things of that nature. Something to consider. Not doing anything and just hoping for the best, hoping that the government will take care of you, Social Security will be there for you, is dangerous. I think we need to be proactive and take steps to ensure that our money outlasts our life, and maybe we can even leave something for our kids.